So, God willing, one day soon I'll be able to give a sermon that's not also about Israel. This week and this war has been one of many, many hard truths. Anti-Semitism is not a thing of the past. My grandfather, who grew up Orthodox, retained the knowledge but largely set aside the corresponding practice, was right, apparently. When, the few days after I came home from Jewish summer camp wearing a kippah, he told me not to wear it in public. He said he was worried for my safety, that Jew hatred was real. And I dismissed this worry. I was an invincible teen, a proud Jew, and the Holocaust at that point had been 40 years before. The world was different, I said, Papa. People don't really hate Jews anymore. I've since learned, like with so many things, he was right and I was wrong. I was naive. As I've said before, my faith in my multi-faith partnerships and collaborations has been shaken, if not shattered. I've stopped waiting for the phone calls and the emails from the non-Jewish faith community. The few that I have gotten are much appreciated, and some of those were even heartfelt. Few were public. But none have been enough to make me feel any less alone. That's the nature of my sense of utter despair. It is also the nature of their empathy for everyone but Jews. Hard truths, I said. And this week, I learned what it really means to live the Jewish value of doing whatever it takes to save a human life. Pikuach nefesh. I have thrown that term around since I learned it in Hebrew school. We engage in these moral thought experiments with our teenagers and in youth group over what would you risk your life? What would you risk your life to save the life of another for? And this week, when presented with impossible choices to redeem the hostages, the answer was immediate and self-evident. There was no choice at all, of course. We need to make any deal, no matter how painful, disastrously political, like that even matters, maybe militarily, it may be for Israel. Ein bira, we say. We have no choice. If we can bring them home, any of them home alive, we must. That is the value of human life. Israel has made prisoner exchanges before, but this is a fundamentally different one. Those were for soldiers who were charged with risking their lives, if needed, to defend the people and the nation. And this was exchanged for those the nation and the soldiers were unable to protect, for civilians, for children, for mothers, for grandmothers. Hard truths. This was different. As Israeli columnist Nadeh Eyal wrote for the Hebrew language news site Ynet, the price of this deal was set on October 7th at 6:30 a.m. If you don't protect hundreds of citizens from kidnapping, and you don't protect against murder, you end up with bad choices. Solidarity isn't expressed in easy moments, but in difficult ones. The most fundamental value of a country is to protection of its citizens. End quote. That's why the Israeli army is called the Israeli Defense Forces, to defend against something so improbable but sadly living in the neighborhood that they do, not unimaginable, as what Hamas did on October 7th. Judaism and Jewish law are clear. The obligation to redeem the captives, Pidyon Shavuim, appears in the books of Leviticus and Nehemiah, as well as in the Talmud, the Shulchan Aruch, and the writings of Maimonides. There is no mitzvah greater than freeing the hostages, writes the 12th century Rabbi Maimonides. For hostages are starving and thirsty and naked, and their lives are in danger, he says. Jewish tradition considers a hostage situation as the most serious of all situations. Someone who hesitates even for 1 hour to free a hostage is considered to have spilt the blood of the hostage, according to Maimonides and Jewish tradition. Money earmarked for charity or for building a synagogue may be and must be used to free a hostage if needed. One may even sell a Sefer Torah, one may even sell a Torah scroll for ransom to bring them home. And why is this? Because Judaism values life over all else. Now, I don't truly know enough about other religions. I like to say it's not my field. I don't truly know enough about other religions of the world to know if that makes us unique amongst the nations. But I do know that it makes me proud that we value human life above all else. It confirms for me that were I not born Jewish, I would choose to be Jewish for that reason alone, among many other reasons as well. The Talmudic principles at play here are complex, and they refer to a time when hostages were often taken for financial ransom, not political gain, or certainly there were exceptions to the basic rule. For example, you may not redeem a hostage if in doing so you put the community in a greater danger, a greater certainty of danger. But the fundamental premise remains unchanged. Freeing the captive, restoring that person's life, their freedom, their security is the greatest mitzvah of our tradition. If somebody asks you, what's the most important mitzvah? The answer is redeeming the captives. But Israel did not act only out of an adherence with Jewish law. It acted out of something more universal, but sadly all too uncommon in our world today. It acted out of a fundamental moral commitment to its citizens. It acted because it valued and values life. Israel once traded 1,027 Palestinian prisoners to get back one of their own. Another time, they traded 1,150 prisoners to get back 3 of their own. They did it because of a deep awareness that national cohesion is essential to national survival. They did it because Israeli parents share a common emotional bond that the imprisonment of one of their children touches all of them. That every person is created b'tselem Elohim in the image of God and therefore bears inestimable, I knew I shouldn't use that word, bears unbelievably valuable and unassailable value as a human being. Israel's enemies have said that this makes Israel weak. They have proudly proclaimed that they will win the war with Israel because Israel values life, and Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad and all the others value death. They have said that. And indeed, the images of Hamas supporters dancing in the streets as terrorists murdered our children and families and paraded the hostages through the streets of Gaza, they made me burn with anger and truly a desire for revenge. But to not redeem the captives, to not bring them home, even some of them home, would have been to have lost something more than a war. It would have been to have lost our humanity, to have lost our Jewishness. And maybe that makes it harder to fight a war with terrorists. I'm sure it does. And then maybe that makes us more vulnerable to attack and exploitation. I know that it does. No one ever said morality was easy. But I do know this, that Israel cared for its children as though they were my own children. It was a mitzvah, and in the midst of an unbearable sadness, it makes me proud. And this is not about sentimentality. Taking into account such considerations of returning citizens does not make Israel weak. It makes it strong. Anyone who thinks strategically or coldly without consideration for the children, their families, their mothers, the elderly who built that country and are now in the hands of monsters is utterly disconnected from Israeli society, from the Israeli social contract, and the Jewish value of protecting human life, that which makes us different from our enemies. And I want to say this to those that accuse Israel of not valuing all human life or human life equally, or of not valuing the lives of innocent civilians, of children in Gaza, as was proposed to me on the CBC the other day. You're wrong. Israel does not want to kill civilians. It does not target civilians. It's war, and it is awful. And innocent people are being killed by Israeli bombs. And they would be killed by Hamas's rockets if it were not for the Iron Dome. And I mourn every single death. It is horrible. And if the life of my own extended family were not in immediate jeopardy, if the enemy had not sworn that they would do October 7th again and again and again and again, then this would be completely unbearable And still it is so hard to bear, the loss of innocent life, the suffering in Gaza and in Israel, and particularly the suffering in Gaza. But they have, and so we must. They have sworn, and so we must. Israel must do the thing that they least want to do. Ein birah. There is no choice. They have no choice. Because we have seen what happens when they do not defend their citizens. I hope that the world will see it. I hope that they will see the difference between fighting to defend and protect life and fighting to take human life and to take hostages. But I am under no illusion that the world will see that. Blinded by moral relativism and by a myopic calculation that sees only power imbalance and only victimhood on the side of those who seek our utter destruction as a nation and as a people. But I don't need the world to see it. I don't need them to see it. I need us. We need us to see it, to see who we are. I need us, I need Israel, I need the Jewish people to see the incredibly painful choice and high price that we are paying to bring them home. And to see that we pay that price without reservation, that we make the choice without hesitation, because that is what it means to value life. That is the value of that Jewish value. I have learned many hard truths over these 7 weeks of war. The greatest truth of all is found in the old Yiddish proverb, Schwer zu sein a Yid. It is hard to be a Jew. But I guess like some proverbial writers of proverbs also say, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And so maybe that's why there are so few Jews, and today, in the midst of our sorrow and pain, I am proud to be one of the few. I'm proud to be a Jew. Shabbat Shalom. Our service continues. Page 586 will rise for Elaine.